titled Holding Space. They cannot be out there for a while. We won't be having words on that rather shaky marquee for the moment, but that will change. I remember growing up when my family and I held a regular evening ritual. Many other people around us did the same. We went outside when daylight began to fade. We sat on chairs and we looked at the eastern sky. We did not look at the western sky where the sun was setting and where sometimes there were spectacular colors being displayed. No, we looked east. And looking east, we observed that moment or moments of twilight when light faded and the dark was taking over. That time has a specific name in some languages. I'll tell you two of them. In the French call it entre chien et loup, which means literally between dog and wolf. It's that time when the light no longer allows us to distinguish the difference between the two. The Germans also have a word, and as usual for German terms, it's a long compound word. It is the word Abenddämmerung. Literally, it means the evening twilight. But these words also have deeper spiritual meanings. Twilight or dusk indicates a time of uncertainty, a time of the dimming of lightness, a time of transition. Looking east indicates embracing those moments where we look forward to the following day. Long after we did these rituals, later in my life, I came to understand that my family and many others were indeed taking part in a ritual, a seemingly simple act of sitting, mostly quietly, and looking, but being connected with a deeper spiritual practice. In many cultures, including our own here, people hold space for daily rituals that connect us with nature's cycles, with the sense of transition. Twilight is also a time in many places and cultures when the swallows come out. Swallows are those birds that fly very fast and that have very pointy tails, and they're hard to keep track of when you try to follow them. And that's what makes them special. Yeah, bats also come out in the warmer seasons, and they are also associated with deeper meanings. But I'm not going to talk about them today. Pretty soon we'll worry about the bats. But swallows have many deep connections with that which is spiritual. In some cultures and mythologies, a swallow brings messages from those who are in the afterlife. Twilight encompasses the fleeting moments when that liminal space between the living and those who have passed is thinner, more transparent. Twilight is the time of the in-between. In some traditions, swallows are seen as that in-between. They're also often seen as good omens. They represent rebirth, that new day that's coming. They represent love and safe returns from dangerous journeys, for example, the journeys taken by sailors. Those special moments when light and dark exist together also happen when we see the northern lights, which happens around here sometimes. To people in Finland and other Nordic countries, the northern lights have spiritual meanings like resurrection, awakening, guidance from the beyond, or the spirit of the departed, as in some indigenous cultures as well. These lights represent the in-between, and tradition in countries like Finland, where they appear a lot, is to hold space for them and the experience of them. It is not done by looking out of the windows when the TV programs happen to have a commercial break and then returning to the show. But rather, it is done by traveling to a lonely cabin in the wilderness and being out at night contemplating the lights. And now I'm making a big jump. So hold your disbelief for a while. As it turns out, the Nordic countries and others where such daily rituals are typical and are deeply engaged in are also the places that rank highest on the so-called happiness scale. I told you I was making a jump. And the happiness scale was just in the news again. It just came out for 2025. There is a World Happiness Report which is compiled every year by the Wellbeing Research Center at the University of Oxford. And they rely on a lot of data, and one of them is the happiness index that the Gallup World Poll gathers. And it's an index that ranks from 0 to 10, and it's presented as what is called a Cantrell ladder. So people are asked to imagine themselves on a ladder going to being the most happy. That's the Cantrell ladder. And basically what the Gallup poll does is to ask respondents in 147 countries for which they gather data around the world. And they ask, where are you in your mind on that ladder to happiness? And then the researchers in Oxford and other places as well, who analyze what is underneath the responses and what connects with them, what correlates with them, they have noticed that happiness, this is not surprising, but they have noticed that happiness relates to a number of factors. And I am not going to mention money or assets or anything like that. The things that are important include these: perceptions that people have of lack of corruption. I'm putting that number one today, and I'll let you wonder why that is. Perceptions of freedom, yeah, that's right up there too. But then come the usual things like life expectancy, which is of course related to the quality of universal health care. Generosity, one of our basic UU values. Honesty, free education, and free time. These are the fundamental elements of well-being. Finland, that very cold and very flat country, very northern, very remote, has stood at number one for 9 years. One thing about Finland also is that just about everyone is educated in public schools. Even though there are money makers and people who have a lot of it, and there are private schools, but people choose to be together in the public schools. Those researchers of happiness say that it's also the best place if you happen to lose your wallet. Why is that? It's because when it is found and it is returned to you, it still has all the cash in it. That's Finland for you. Where is the United States on indexes like this, you might ask? In 2025, in those data that just came out, it stood at number 24. It fell another step since the previous year. I don't have to wonder why. But compare this with where we were in 2012. Then we were at number 11, almost in the top 10, not quite. Now, I'll tell you something about correlation. Some of it is spurious, I'm sure. None of the English-speaking countries are in the top 10. I don't know what that's telling us. So let's skip that. But think about that difference going from number 11, almost in the top 10, to number 24 in a little over 10 years. It is an enormous drop. 2012 was the middle of the Obama presidency. And even during the second presidency, it started going downhill. Why the sharp drop in perceived well-being and happiness, and in actual well-being, which connects with that? In the US, it has to do with more than who is the president. It's not totally unrelated, but the decline in happiness is particularly due to what is happening to younger people. We are an aging country, and some people think, well, those old folks, they must be really unhappy, you know. No, that's not the case. It's the young people who are really unhappy. The decline in happiness happens especially to those less than 30 years of age, and even more so to those who are less than 25 years of age. And it directly correlates. This is not a spurious correlation. This is one that has been verified. It correlates with an increase in loneliness, social isolation, political polarization, lack of trust in government and in other people, and increasing feelings of despair. Many young people turn to things like gaming, watching videos, social media posting, and other activities that they engage in by themselves, because the gaming they do online. Their partners may be on another continent if they have partners. So they're by themselves. So it's activities that don't really allow for holding spaces where we closely communicate with other living beings and living things, and non-living things like rocks in nature, and with the wonders of nature. There is a continual reduction in positive emotions that people of that age group talk about. That's the big decline. So what does this have to do with rituals, with existing in those liminal spaces between the world of the living and the world of the dead, with transformation, and with holding places, places for rituals, places for having an altar in our house, which could be a place where the pictures are of our loved ones, the only place that we dust once in a while, those kinds of places. There is not a strict one-to-one connection with the rankings of countries on the happiness index, but there is a strong overlap between happiness and the perceived importance of factors that relate to well-being of all, togetherness, appreciation of the ancestors, and the performance of rituals of transition, like rituals of twilight, of light and darkness being together in the same space, things that help us pay attention to liminal spaces, that fabric between light and dark, or between the drudgery of daily consumerism and the calm realization of the interdependence we have with other living things. Cultivating those feelings of interdependence and having some of them ritualized. For example, in rituals that celebrate twilight, the turning of seasons, as we just experienced, the transition between days, all of that helps improve the factors that feed into the happiness index. When we realize more and more that we are all interdependent, we are also more likely to practice things like honesty and generosity. We are more likely to see everyone as equal, no matter what their social standing, their gender, their age, their sexuality, their skin color, their geographic location. So may we hold a place in our lives where we practice rituals of connecting with one another, with nature, with those who lived before us, with the swallows and their spiritual meaning, and with all living and non-living things. May we make it so. Let us rise, embody our spirit for our second